Alright people, it's back to some tutorials with Illustrator. And I realized last week that my tutorial is kind of advanced. And there's probably a lot of people out there that weren't even understanding how I was going about making that pattern. So then I thought, you know what? What I need to do is make an absolute basic tutorial for beginners using Illustrator. So that is what we are going to do today. Now I'll go ahead and open up Illustrator. Now with Illustrator, like I said, absolutely for beginner. So you open up your program. This is typically what you will see. So what we need to do is that we need to start a new document. So how we'll do that is like most softwares out there, we will go to File and they will go to New. This will instantly go ahead and open up. And like I said, we're keeping this basic. So I don't need to go over everything within this menu, but I will go over the key components that we need to know about. So the first thing is the size. How big do we want our document to be? And as soon as we do press OK, what it's going to create is an artboard. And we can think of the artboard sort of being like a piece of paper, a canvas that you're going to work on. Now, I'm going to leave mine at 10 by 10. It's up to you guys. Whatever you want to set it at, that's completely up to you. And just let me tell you, whatever you set it at, if I set it at 10 by 10, and halfway through my project, I realized, oh, you know what? I need it to be 15 by 15. You can always change the size at any point during your creation in Illustrator. So just let you know that. To the right, what we have is our measuring units. Also, completely up to you, whatever you want to choose. So if you're millimeters, centimeters, you choose one that suits your needs. So I will leave mine in inches. We don't need to worry about this bleed. That's more advanced, sending stuff to the printers. And then sometimes this advanced button may be open, maybe not. I'm just going to open it up, particularly for this color mode. Now, what I can tell you with the color mode is, with my experience, RGB is what you need if you're going to be utilizing your file, let's say, to go to a laser machine. Well, RGB is going to be the file format that you want it. And then you have one other option, and that's CMYK. CMYK, well, what is that? I don't want this color scheme to pop open. Sorry about that. So the CMYK is what you would use if you're sending a file off to make business cards, a brochure, and sorts of things like that. So I'm going to keep it at RGB. And honestly, those are the key things that we need to know about. Everything else kind of gets into advanced stuff, whatnot. So I'm going to start with the RGB 10 by 10 inch document. And I'm going to go ahead and press OK. As soon as we do that, we have our working artboard within Illustrator. Now, what we need then at this point with our artboard, I'm just double checking something. Okay, it's still recording. I thought maybe that window messed it up. Now, typically, Illustrator is going to open up like this. Unless you opened it up before, you opened up panels. We have our toolbar over here. These are the main tools that we are going to be going over today. And I can tell you, we will not be going over all these tools. Some are much more advanced. Some you may never even use. I will be going over the key tools for beginners that you can utilize. As you become more advanced, you will start to learn other tools maybe that interest you on whatever it is that you are creating. Now, I am going to open up a few other panels. Where we find panels within Illustrator is going to be under Window. Now, we have a number of panels. And honestly, if you had every single panel open, it would fill up your whole screen. So honestly, we don't need to have every panel open. I'm going to show you the most basic ones that you will want to have open. First one is Layers. Now, Layers essentially is, let's say I had a circle on this artboard, And then what I wanted to do is that I wanted to have a square, but I don't want those two to be on the same page. So that's where you utilize layers. And as we start to go through it, we'll see how that actually works. The next panel we're going to open is swatches. And swatches is where our colors come into play. So we can pick the colors that we want our objects to be, the stroke colors of our object. And like I said earlier, you do not need to be using these, honestly, on the day-to-day basis, especially for beginners. We are just going over basic, easy things to get you started and to get you working on the things that you want to make within Illustrator. So, first thing we're going to go over is these two arrows at the top. We have our selection tool and we have our direct selection tool. These two arrows work completely different from each other. Somewhat similar, but they definitely do different things. Now, in order to select anything on our artboard or outside of our artboard, we need to select it. But right now, there's nothing to select on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our basic primitive shapes, which would be 4 icons down right there. Now, if you hold it down, it shows different shapes. So I'm going to just go ahead and start with a rectangle. Now, in order to get a shape on here, you just use your mouse, hold it down, and it creates that shape, just like that. Now, to go over how these arrows work, the first arrow is our selection tool. So in order to select this tool, there's a few different ways. I can press on a line, or I can make a bounding box that just goes over a little portion of it. So when it is selected, this is where we can move an object by simply just moving it on the line, or I can go near the center of it, move it that way, or you can use the arrows on the keyboard and that will move it as well. Now, the second thing that you can do with our selection tool is that you can shrink your object, enlarge it, and all you got to do is go to any one of the corner squares and hold it down and simply move it out. Now, we see as I'm moving it, it's not keeping its proportions. So if that's real key to you, how you will keep the proportions correct is that you hold down Shift, and now I bring it in and out, and it will never break its proportion. So a very key element right there. And then another option that we do have is rotating it. And all you have to do to rotate it is go to the corner and then go off the square, and you're going to see two little triangles connected by a curve. That means I am rotating my object. Now, another key thing when you are rotating, if you want to move it in 45-degree increments, you hold Shift. And I'm moving my 45. That really comes in key. And then when you are moving it, you see that little number? It's telling you the angle that you are moving it. So if that's real important, definitely keep an eye on that. And later on in other tutorials, I'll show how you can move it to a specific angle, because maybe you need that precise angle for your specific project. Now, everything that we've just done, remembered, was our selection tool. So that's for moving the object as a whole, transforming your object to be larger, smaller, and then being able to rotate your object. Now, to get into our direct selection, very different how this works. So what I'll do, I'll press on my object, and now if you look closely, there's going to be 4 little squares that go over the corner of my object. Now, what this is going to allow us to do is choose that square, and now I can move that independently. So this is how you will take your basic primitive shape and start to transform it to whatever object shape that you want within Illustrator. And I can tell you, using basic primitive shapes, you might think that, oh, that's too simple. I won't be able to make anything with just a basic square. Well, that's false. There is a lot of stuff that you can create within just starting to use primitive shapes or not. Now, another thing you can do is just press on a line, and I can move that line as well. So you definitely have a few different options on here, and you also can press the square and use the arrow keys as well, just to move it maybe a small increment back and forth. So what we need to remember within Illustrator dealing with our two little selection tools is that the direct selection tool moves the whole shape as a solid object, allows you to transform your object to make it smaller, larger, or it allows you to rotate your object. Whereas the direct selection tool, that allows you to physically alter that shape's form so you can better suit it for whatever it is that you are trying to create within Illustrator. So just remember two different ways that these are used, and it's just very important that you do remember those, because you might end up doing something, selecting it, and you want to move that anchor, but you're not being able to because we're in the different selection tool. So that is our two little areas, the most easiest way that I can explain it. So now that we have our shape, we look over to our layers over here. If you look in that little white square, we can see our shape. Well, what we want to do, we want to create a new layer, and we don't want this to be visible while we're creating our new shape. So how we create a new layer is right down here at the bottom that says create new layer. I press it, instantly it says layer 2. Now I don't want to see the shape anymore, so all you got to do is press the I, it disappears, and now we are on layer 2. So we won't be abrupted by that shape being confused and whatnot as we are creating. Next up, we're going to go down to these basic primitive shapes. Now if you hold it down, it opens up the little menu and it shows all of the 5 shapes we can use. Now I say 5 because this flare tool is really not a shape. It's more of like maybe a little special effect. For me, I've never used it, and I assume most of you out there probably will not use it. So now, since I already kind of went and was using the rectangle tool, I'm just going to go down to our rounded rectangle tool. Now, the nice thing about this is I go ahead, I'm not going to let go of my mouse, I'm going to go ahead and create that shape. Now, we see those rounded corners? We have an ability to alter the radius of those corners, and the only way you can do that is that you can't let go of your mouse button. How you will change it is either the up and down arrow. So I'm pressing up right now. We see those corners increase in curvature, and the opposite way, decrease. Now, you also can go, you want to do the most absolute curve possible, press the arrow pointing right, and it goes to extreme curve, back to the left arrow, it goes back. So it's very key when you are creating this with your mouse, don't let go of the mouse button. Go ahead, hold it, press the up and down arrows, or go extreme. It's completely up to you. Now, that is the first way that we can create our shape on here. I'm going to simply just press delete. The second way that we can create all of these shapes is basically just pressing on your artboard, pops open a window, and it's now asking you what is the width and height that you want of that shape. As well, with this rounded rectangle tool, we can enter in our corner radius. So let's say I want only a radius of a 0.25, quarter inch. And I want it to be, let's say, 3.5 by 3.5 square. Press OK. There we go. It gets the corner radius as I want, as far as the specific shape, that size for that shape that I want for my project. Pretty neat. It's that easy to be able to get those sizes of shapes that you do want. So that's our rounded rectangle tool. And let me just add, once you do have this shape, you will no longer be able to change the corner radius of that shape. Now, that's what this Illustrator, I'm on number 6. I know some of the most current versions, you actually can alter that at any point in time. So just a heads up, you might have a newer version saying, oh no, you can change that. Well, I'm unfortunately working with 6. So that's what tutorial I'm working with for 6. Now, our next shape is our ellipse tool. Works the same as those last two. I go ahead and hold it, create that shape. Remember, if I hold down shift, it will go ahead and keep it proportional. I also can just press on the board, say, oh, you know what? I want a 4x4 circle. Press OK, and there's my circle. Now, these last two, polygon star, work just like the rounded rectangle tool. So the key is don't let go of your mouse. So I want more sides to this polygon. All I have to do is go up or down, and I create more sides, or go less sides to a basic triangle. So it's kind of up to you how many sides that you want on that polygon. But what I can tell you is that you wouldn't want to make so many sides to create a circle. Just use the ellipse tool to make that circle, not the polygon. And then the same thing, just like the rounded rectangle tool as well, what I can do is press on it. No, that's not what I wanted. I want to press on there. It opens up. Now we can see how many sides I make. That's way too complicated. I want, let's say, 5 sides. I want a radius of, what should we say, 1 inch. Say OK. There we go. Instantly have our polygon tool how we want. And then our last shape is our star tool. So go ahead. Don't let go of the mouse button. Up and down will create how many points I want for that star. And this is a cool little shape. There's a lot we can do. Specifically, I could make a gear, no problem, using the star tool. Later in time, I will show you guys how to make a gear with ease. So that is our primitive shapes. So definitely don't think that you can't use these. These shapes, there is so much you can do with those. And that comes along with editing that specific shape. So those are our primitive tools, or primitive shapes, I should say. Now, I'm just wondering how long my recording is going right here. And it's not giving me a time estimate. So that's fine. I'm going to just keep going. So the next thing we're going to go over is being able to fill our shape with color or change the stroke color. So right now, as a default, it always ends up being white for your color. And how we know that is at the bottom of our toolbar, we have 2 little swatches. If I hover over this one, it says the fill tool. And the one behind it says the stroke. Now, whichever one is in the foreground, and how you get it in foreground, just press on it and it instantly comes to the foreground. It will also sometimes open up this menu, and that's fine as well. I'll just move this to the side so it's not opening and closing. So I want to change the fill. So that's in the foreground. All I have to do now is go up to my swatches and pick a color. So let's pick orange. And whoops. Now, the reason it didn't change is that my object was not selected. So I'm going to go like this, select it, go back to my orange, and instantly we have our shape filled, just like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and just switch it and shows you. It instantly changes the color of that as I go around and just alter what color I want it to be. So I'm going to get to maybe a light color, hopefully not too bright. So that is for our fill. Now, the second option we have is for our stroke. So right now, it's black. We can see that right there. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to go to this stroke, and let's say I want it to be orange. So now it's orange, but you know what? It's hard to see, especially for you viewers right now. So here's a neat trick. We want this stroke to be at a larger size so we can physically see it. And maybe that is going to be our end goal. So in order to change this stroke size, once your object is selected, up here it says stroke. I pull down the drop down menu and it's giving me my sizes. So you know what? I want maybe this to be at a .0313. So I press that. Oh, still not big enough for us. I'm just trying to make it big for all of us. So .25. And look at our stroke is super big. That's a nice tool that's automatic for outlining the shapes, objects that we are making in Illustrator. So now if I change it, we can see it's just that easy to go ahead and change the color of your stroke as well as fill within Illustrator. Well, that looks the same. So just like that, with ease, we can easily go about changing the color of our shapes within Illustrator. Now, I'm not going to go into too much more about our swatches because I mean it's kind of basic how it works for right now. Another cool thing you can do down here by our fill and our stroke color, there's a little arrow at the top right that says swap fill and stroke. If I press that, it's going to switch out those colors. Sometimes it's interesting to be able to see real fast maybe the opposite of what's going on with your stroke and fill color. So another basic thing is maybe I want to zoom in on this object. And how we zoom in is the bottom of our toolbar that says zoom. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in to my object. And maybe I wanted to move that anchor for some reason. So I go ahead and select it. And when I'm zoomed in, I have more control to be able to say, you know what? I want this to be the only one that I'm moving for some reason. So I go like that, and I'm being able to move it. So that's when you want to zoom in and change those little details. And now let's say I want to change it on the other side. Well, you don't have to zoom out. What you can do is go to your little hand tool, and that's going to allow you to pan, being super close. So you don't have to zoom in, zoom out, do the things. And so I'm going to move that one. So the zoom tool is very handy. It's going to be a tool that you're working with constantly within Illustrator, same as the hand. So you don't have to zoom in and out. You can pan throughout your workspace to make sure that you're being able to change it and just work faster. Honestly, that's the key elements, being able to work faster. So I'm going to zoom out now. Now, right now, it's on a plus on my zoom tool. Hold down Alt. That's going to allow you to zoom out now. So we can tell now I made those little changes. And here's a key thing I see a lot of beginners doing. They zoom in. They get zoom crazy, which can happen sometimes. How we get back to having our artboard within frame with ease is going back to View and then say Fit Artboard in Window. So I press that. Instantly, our artboard is right now to where we can see it visibly within ease. Next tool that I'm going to go over now is just going to be our text tool. So I want to put my text on a separate layer. So what we have to do is press New Layer. We see it puts number 3 on there. And what I'm going to do, maybe put some text inside this little shape that we've created. So I'm going to zoom in. And then how we go to text is our T tool. Now, basically, I always just go to T and I press where I want my text to be. And then when I press on there, there's a little blinking arrow, or not blinking arrow, a little cursor. Now, that's going to be the size of our font size. It's sort of small right now. So before I type, I'm going to make sure it's large. How we change that is at the top, we have a little number. And that's our font size. I'm going to increase that now. Let's say 48. That's good right there. So now all I got to do is press or type out what it is that I want. So I'll keep it basic, doing star. Once we type, here's a key element. We want to now change the font. Well, highlight your text using the mouse, then go up to where it says character at the top and just press on it so it's highlighted in color. And what that allows you to do now is use your up and down arrows to change the physical font. Now, I'm always changing my fonts within here, and as we go, we can see drastically change it from font to font. If you don't have many fonts on your computer, I recommend going on Google and typing out free fonts. There's plenty of sites out there that will allow you to download fonts and increase your selections for being able to use Illustrator. So, as you can tell, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that one. Now, I'm going to go ahead, move it, and now we easily have a font on here with our little graphic. Now, pretty easy, huh? Let's say I want to change my font color. Well, select it. Remember with our selection tool. And let's say I want this to be white. Well, I'm going to go up here to my swatch, choose white. There we go. Instantly, I have my star being white. So you can change it just like any shape. Once it's selected, change the color, change the stroke. It's completely up to you. Now, honestly, for beginning lessons, being able to know our shapes, being able to write some text, knowing our selection tools, as well as zoom and pan, that is basically just keeping this lesson very basic. Because as I start to go through other tools, which are on here, and some start to get a little bit more options, these are the key elements. Now, before I do forget, another key thing is maybe you wanted to make this and you wanted to make it larger. So another thing I'm going to show you really fast is I'm going to select everything, select it, and let's say I want this though at a specific size. As I do change the size, we see at the corner it's telling us our numbers. Well, that's the size. I want it at that size, but now look at our artboard. It's going beyond the actual artboard itself. So we need to make our artboard bigger. And how you will do that is under our toolbar, all the way near the bottom, right above our little hand tool for panning, it says artboard. If I press that, it now goes into this mode. And what this mode does, it allows me now to individually change any corner point, side points, grab it by this corner, increase it. So now I'm increasing this because now I want to print it at that specific size for my printer, let's just say. And to get out of the artboard, you just press the arrow. And now I have my full size of artboard that is fitting my graphics. Pretty easy, folks. Like I said, this is strictly beginners. As I come out with my new tutorial, we're going to get into more advanced things like using our pen tool. Definitely something that takes a lot of practice. And that's how you will have the opportunity to draw a custom shape versus only using the 5 that we have here. So that is pretty much the tutorial, the beginning basics of you being able to select your shapes, transform them, different sizes, rotate, being able to fill them with colors, as well as zooming in, zooming out, our hand tool for panning, and then as well as our text. So that pretty much is it for this little tutorial at using the absolute basics for beginners using Illustrator. If you have any questions, leave those in the comments, and I will definitely do my best to get back to you as quickly as possible so I can help you become better within Illustrator. So until next time, people, that is going to be my little lesson. So take care, get ready for our next tutorial, and practice these basics because they're all going to work on top of each other as we begin to get more advanced within our Illustrator. And look at this, another change of color. I don't want that to change. I don't know why it shows up. So, till next time, people, This is Jasper, and I am out. Have a good weekend. Goodbye.